morning, everyone. Today it's my privilege to be able to talk to you about the trip that the Singing Men of Texas did in Hungary and Romania just earlier this month. And I just want to start off by saying thank you. Thank you so much for letting me have the opportunity to go. Let me tell you how fast this happened. I took a few months off in the fall from Singing Men, and I jumped back in to participate in January. And that's when I expressed my interest to go. And so what happened was Homer made, on Sunday night, I mentioned that it would be good if we would help Randy to go because it's kind of an expensive trip. And so before the next Sunday, all the money was there. All of it. And so I didn't have to worry about a thing. And that's because of the love that you have for missions and the love that you have for evangelism. And I just want to say thank you. And I know you love me too. And so I appreciate you very much. And so I wanted to tell you some things about all that happened. I could probably stand up here and talk for about a week about all that happened, all that I saw, all that I felt, and all that God did. And before I left, I really wanted to express to you that God would do great things. Just like he can here, he would do great things because we had seen it before so many times in the times that we have been on our mission trips to Europe. When we sang to 10,000 people and 5,000 of those responded positively to the gospel message. And so basically that's kind of what happened again. And I'll show you the numbers here in just a minute. But I wanted to go to that next slide, Tim. I want you to see the farmland that's part of Hungary and Romania. It's just beautiful over there. And this time of the year, everything is green and lush, and it's great. It was nice and warm over there, too. Sometimes it's kind of cold in the month of April or May, but it was really nice and warm, and it was really beautiful. The two countries that are displayed there on that map, Hungary and Romania, all together are about half or a third of the size of Texas. So it's really not, in our estimation, it's not really very big. But we had a great time going over there. This trip was planned 2 years to a year and a half ahead of time. And so people started signing up quite a long time ago. And then here comes Randy in January and just signed up, and Lakeshore helped me go. So I really appreciate that. Let's go to the map. Okay, so here's our map of what our trip was like. And so let me show you here's Budapest. This is where we landed. This is where we went first. So we left here Monday night and got there Tuesday afternoon. And then we got on a bus and went to the first place where the concert was. This is Debrecen. And so that was our first concert day. And we had a concert there. And then we went to Bekeskava on a bus. So lots of our, all of our traveling was on a bus, which is different than what we did when we were in Ukraine. Tammy and I went back in 2010, and we were on a riverboat. And the boat, a Viking river cruise ship is what it was. And so the boat was our restaurant and our travel and our hotel. But this time it was going from place to place in a nice bus. So we went from Debrecen to Bekeskava to Oradea, and then we actually went to a hotel in Arad and drove to Cluj, our next place, and did a concert, and then we went back to Arad and did the next concert. And then here is Timișoara. I hope I'm saying that right. Timișoara is where the revolution of Romania started. Their revolution from communism started in that city right there. Okay, we did a concert there, and then we went to crossing the border was kind of interesting. It took a while because you have to check out of this country and into this one, and then on the way back you have to check out of that country into this one so they don't lose you, And on the way over, the first time their internet was down, so it took 4 hours for our 125 people to cross the border. Okay? Then on the way back, it only took 2 hours to get to Pest. All right? And then we did our last two concerts in a church in Hungary where we filled up the church twice and did it that way. So in all, we did 10 concerts, and let me show you the numbers, okay? So here's the attendance, the total attendance of what we had in all of them was about 8,800, and that's kind of an estimated. We didn't count every head of what was going on, but here's the decisions, or the positive responses, they call them, that were turned in. And how that really happens is when Michael gave the message and people filled out, everybody got a brochure that looks like this, and you can come and look at it, but most of it's not in English, so some of them were in Hungarian and some of them were in Romanian. So on the last page, it had a little check box at number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Number 1 was, would you like Singing Men to come back again? If yes, check that box. Number 2, give the Singing Men a grade from 0 to 10, okay? And Michael kept saying, I'm going to give them a 9 because they won't let me sing with them. So, and then number 3 was, I am interested in having the forgiveness that's offered in Jesus Christ, okay? If you say yes, then you check number 3. And number 4, I accept God's forgiveness through Jesus Christ alone. And then you check number 4 as that's what the positive responses are. And then at the end of the concert, you tear this little perforated part off and turn it in, and we had exact numbers of how many of those were turned in. Of people who responded, I want to accept the forgiveness of Christ through Jesus Christ alone. 3,903 was the positive responses. And how many of those were first time and how many of those were genuine, we don't really know. God only knows. But someone said, would you be real happy if it was only half? Well, yeah, that's a lot. But that was the responses that we got. They are hungry for the gospel in Europe. And even though this is a free country, it's, in a lot of ways, it's like the United States. Our freedom has led us a lot of different places away from Christ, away from God. And that they can be very materialistic and worldly and even pagan, just like the United States. And sometimes that's where freedom kind of leads you. But all in all, there's a lot of people that are hungry for the gospel of Christ. They want forgiveness just like we do, like we sang about this morning, the forgiveness that is offered in Jesus Christ. All right, next one. Okay. I wanted to just focus today because there's so many things I could talk about, but I wanted to focus today on some of the people that were a blessing to me, people that made this concert tour happen, and people that were just instrumental in making it go so well. So some of you probably already know about what happened with our director, Don Blackley. Don has been our director for 30 years, and this was to be his last time to lead the last couple of concerts and lead this concert tour. But he ended up being in the hospital, and he could not go with us. The plan was already for his son Trent to take over, so he had to take over as soon as the concert tour started. And so Trent is now our director, and he's fabulous. He just is so talented and does a great job, and all of the people love him. And he's real easy to follow. His passion is, and his joy for doing the job is great. He's the minister of music at First Baptist Church of Rockwall, and he is now our director for the next, 30 more years. And the legacy that was left to him by his father, Don Blackley, is amazing. And so what Don has done and what he has accomplished in those years, so many times when he has led them in evangelistic concert tours and in the monthly concerts that we do from September through May, it's just been a great experience for me. I joined this particular group in 2002, but I have been a part of Singing Men of Texas since 1989. There's several Singing Men groups. There's 6 different chapters in the state of Texas, And I was in the West Texas group, and I was in the Southeast Texas group around Houston, and now I was back in the West Texas group, and then I've been in the North Central chapter, which is what we are, which is the biggest chapter by far since 2002. And now Trent is our director. Next one. Michael Gott is the evangelist that we have paired with and partnered with for many years. And he spends most of his time in Europe doing international evangelism. And Tammy and I went on the trip to Ukraine in 2010, and he was our partner back in that trip. And they do a lot of English-speaking schools where they bring people in, and they are wanting to learn more about how to speak better English, and they do evangelism through those English-speaking schools. And then they also brought Singing Men of Texas to Ukraine. I don't know how many times, 8 or 9 times, I'm not sure. And the positive responses that have been in Ukraine since 2010 is about 30,000. Just like we saw in this, the 3,903 positive responses. And what's good about that, when they do the little brochure and they do check 1, 2, 3, and 4, they also have a place for you to write down your email and your first name, and the people that are in the churches and in those cities, the Christians there, have a chance to follow up with those people who have made decisions. Okay? So Michael Gott, and then his wife Jan, she's really the person in charge because she's the one who knows about hotels and travel and concert halls and different things. If you want to ask a question about any kind of detail, you ask Jan because she's the one that knows. Michael doesn't know. He gets it all mixed up. He's in charge of the spiritual part, and she's in charge of all the other stuff, the logistics and the money and how much it costs and negotiating prices and all that stuff. And so she is a tireless worker and a great partner for her husband Michael as they do international evangelism. And then the next one is this blonde lady is their daughter, Amy Pinnell, who also is one of the ongoing team members who was with us during the trip. And she's another one that helps it all to run well and puts together all the travel for. Can you imagine putting together travel for 125 people to get there and be safe and all their luggage get there and then get back? And that's the way it happened because they're really, really good at it. Okay. And so the next person, this is Kasusha. She is a member of a church near Kiev, Ukraine, and she's a professional photographer. So she goes with the Gotts to all of their events when they do evangelism events and English-speaking schools and events like ours with the Singing Men of Texas or the Texas Country Boys. Okay, that's our country and western group that's part of our Singing Men of Texas. They go, and she's the one that takes all the great professional pictures, and she is a member of a church near the capital city of Kiev, Ukraine, and her church have a school that they run, excuse me, junior high and high school that they run, so they do lots and lots of work with students. And so they have a pretty good sized organization going there, and so they do quite a bit of work with this kind of evangelistic events. Next one. The lady in the middle there is a friend that we made about 30 years ago. Tammy and I met Allison Ware, and she is just a sweet, sweet lady. She and her husband Connie did music evangelism all over state of Texas and all throughout the United States for years and years and years until, unfortunately, her husband got cancer and he passed away. And then a few years later, she got hooked up with Michael and Jan, and she has been working for the Michael Gott Evangelism Association for years, and she spends a lot of her time in Europe doing English-speaking schools and working with the events that Michael and Jan do. I wanted to say just something about, I just picked out 3 of the guys that are part of our group of 200, that I just really appreciate a lot because they inspire me. When I see the work that they do, it just really encourages me. This is Charles McLeod, who is our pianist. He's not flashy. He's not outspoken and someone that calls a lot of attention to himself, but he is super solid at playing the piano. And anytime that we have a rehearsal or a concert or a recording session, he is pretty much perfect in what he does. He is just exceptional. And so I really appreciate Charles. The next one is Mel Kincaid. Don Blackley says that when he gets to heaven, he's going to ask God to give him a voice like Mel's because he's incredible. He is the minister of music at First Baptist Church of Mineral Wells, and he's just one of the very many great singers that are a part of our group. But his humble spirit and his commitment to excellence is just amazing, and so I appreciate Mel very much. And here's my hero. This is Red Freeman, who's the first chair French horn player. He's 80 years old, and he just goes just like the rest of us and carries his horn and all of his luggage and makes it from place to place and plays beautifully. And he's one of those guys, like Ben's dad, who was a military professional French horn player back when he was a young guy, and he played in the military band, and that's and now he plays in a church in Irving. I think it's MacArthur Boulevard Baptist Church, but he's one of our guys. He's my hero, Red Freeman. Now here's some people that you will know. Paul and Christy Newberry, y'all remember them? They were part of our group, and they were here for I'm not sure how many months in an interim time before I came. Great folks. And here's the next one is Bill Gamble. You remember him? He substituted for me. He plays the piano, the guitar, the banjo, the mandolin. He's a great singer and entertainer and worship leader, and I appreciate him very much. He's one of those great guys. All right. I really appreciate people that are in the country that do so much before we ever get there to make it better for us and more affordable. This man is the tractor dealership owner in Debrecen, the first city that we did our concert, and he went in and he sat down as part of the negotiation team when they said we want to bring in these people and we're going to stay in the hotel. He said, that's too much. You need to charge them less. And so that's just what he does. He's one of those guys who makes deals, and he sells big equipment, and he had the contacts and the networking ability and the deal-making prowess to go in and say, yeah, you can charge them less. And so that's just, and he's a church member there in that first city in Debrecen. I really appreciate the interpreters for the great job that they do because they are incredible. Just when Michael gets up and he does his sermon, which is somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes, they just follow along just flawlessly, interpreting phrase by phrase and sentence by sentence in Hungarian or Romanian. And before, when we did years and years of ministry in Ukraine, they translated into Russian or Ukrainian, either one, because those are different. And so I appreciate them so much. This is Pastor Onesimus from the church in Arad, who was interpreting at this point. The next one is another one of our interpreters who also interpreted for us all of those times in Ukraine, and he's just excellent. And one of these guys, I'm not sure exactly which one it was, if it was him or there was like 4 or 5 that did translating for us, but he's a professor at university, and his job is to teach interpreting. And so when we went to his town, his students were able to come and see if he was really any good at what he was teaching. And he's actually the best one in the country. And so I was really appreciative of the job that the interpreters do. Next one. These are the bus drivers. Now, you know that when you do all those miles in a bus with 125 people, it can be crazy. And there's schedules to kind of get to a certain place so that you can get to a concert and have a little bit of practice time and set up, or you're supposed to get somewhere where there's a meal, and sometimes you might be held up by crossing the border or whatever, but these guys were excellent, and they did a great job. There's bus number 3. There was 3 buses kind of like that, and this is the one that I was on. And that's a nice little ride right there. I don't know how much that cost, like $500,000 or something like that. But it was great, and so that was, part of that negotiating of prices and all that stuff went into having these really nice buses, and so that's what we went from city to city in the bus. And this is the sound team this is, of course, Trent in the middle, and then his roommate and one of his best friends, Michael Bridges, is there in the back. But all of those other guys are the sound team that put up all the sound equipment and set up everything so that when we got there, we could go ahead and practice and get ready for the concert. But they are from the same church where the photographer is from, in that little town not too far from Kiev, Ukraine. And they have a big organization where they do this kind of stuff all the time, and they were excellent. I appreciate them very much. They work tirelessly to drive their own vehicle, their own, like a van that they loaded with all the stuff, and get there early and set it all up, and they did a great job. I also really appreciate people who write music and compose great songs, because it's been so good to be able to be a part of a group that does dynamic, evangelistic music. Now, this is Chris Machen, who wrote the song Bow the Knee. He's a member of our group, singing the solo in one of the concerts. A song that he wrote, 20 years ago, and it's still selling like it was brand new. It's just a great song, and so it was part of our concert, and this is Chris doing the solo. All right, some of the guys. I'm not sure if this is before the concert or in between, because when Michael preached, we would go off the stage, backstage, and just sit, because the choir members stood up the whole time, and then they would go back and sit down for 20 minutes or so, and then come back out. I'm not sure if that's before or during, but this guy right here is Scott Rash, my roommate, and as big as our group is, this was one of the guys I had never met before until I showed up at the same hotel room as him. He's great, though. He's awesome. So we have about 200 members all together in our whole group, and so I got to meet Scott and spend the 2 weeks with him as my roommate, and we had a great time, and he's just great. If he was the guy up here leading music or giving a report, you would just love him. He's just real down to earth. He's at a church near La Pan or Santo, Texas, kind of in between Weatherford and Granbury, a little bitty town, but he's been their minister of music for 29 years, bivocational, and so he's a really great guy. Another thing that I really appreciate is just being able to be a part of something that's that gives me so much joy and satisfaction. I have loved playing the French horn since I was 11 years old, and I still get to do that. And so here's my little group right here. This is the 3 horn players, Red and Daryl and me, in the horn section, and it's just incredible to be able to do something that you love, and just get to think, here I am on the other side of the world doing something that I never knew when I was 11 years old, that I'd still even get to do this even here. But now I'm getting to do that over in other countries. I really appreciate people who pray. During the times when our concerts and the sermon was going on, our team members would go back and pray. And they would be sometimes in another room, and oftentimes they had to be in another room because there was no place to sit. There was no place to stand. And so they were just in another place. And they were praying that the responses to the gospel presentation would be good and would be real, and that they would be lasting. And so I appreciate people at home praying. I know that people were praying for me, and people all over the place were just lifting us up. And we were 7 hours ahead in Hungary and 8 hours ahead while we were in Romania. But I know that some of you were praying even while we were doing the concert and the sermon. I think the next one is some of the other team members that were back in another room praying during the concert. When Michael got up to preach and had the interpreter, he really gave just a simple evangelistic message that talked about how Jesus died for us because he loves us. And he offers the gift of salvation through his blood. And if you want that gift, if you want that forgiveness that's offered to you, it's free. It's something that's given to you because Jesus paid for it. And so it was really that simple. And so he would give a real simple evangelistic message, and it was interpreted by the interpreter. And then at the end of his message, he would go through the brochure, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And number 4 was the response, I accept this forgiveness through Jesus Christ alone. And then those were turned in. And he would tell them, what we want you to do is tear off this little piece and hand it in. But when you hand that in, we have some gifts for you. We have, and I think the next picture shows him holding up one of these. This is the, in Hungary, we gave out these, which was a place for you to go to a web link and you could download all the music for free. Okay? And it would work for you too. Where you can download all of these songs for free. There's 10 songs, and one of those is Bow the Knee, Who Can Satisfy My Soul, okay? All of these songs are able to be downloaded and used for free, okay? And then in Romania, they actually had copied discs with those songs and gave them out. So he said, we want to give you some free music. We want to give you a book called How to Have a Happy Life. It talked about accepting Christ and how Christ can help you to have a happy life because of his forgiveness and his love. And then another thing that they offered was free Bibles, either New Testaments or the whole Bible, giving in their language. And so they would turn in that little part and go to the next one. I think this is, that's Michael probably talking about something funny at the end, because at times he could be really funny. But most of the time he was just dead on serious about offering this free forgiveness to people in Jesus Christ. And then the next one, these are people turning in their little number 1, 2, 3, 4 form out of the brochure and getting their free stuff that we wanted to give them. And then the next one is probably the same thing, giving out CDs or these little things where you can get a free download, or books or Bibles. And then there's another one about, here's church members from those local churches also help do the giving out of stuff. And so it was a great way to get them involved. Next one. Okay, and then while the orchestra played the postlude, they sent the choir members out to greet people. And so that was one of the great things about us being able to have face-to-face contact with people. We didn't just say goodbye and they went out the back door. We wanted to meet them. And so they shook hands and talked to them. We took a Hungarian lesson, but we learned very little. One of the things that I did learn is that if you want to say hello in Hungarian, see ya. See ya. That sounds like you're saying goodbye, but that's see ya is the word hello in Hungarian, okay? And so we greeted the people and took a lot of pictures with them, and they especially liked to take the picture with the guys in the cowboy hats. And so there's, I think that's Larry Collins. Okay, next one. Some of the places that we went were big churches. This is the big church that's in Oradea. It's the biggest Hungarian-speaking church in the world, and it's in Romania. Okay, it's Oradea, Romania. This is the big church that seats over 3,000. I think the next picture is, was my view from where the orchestra sat in part of the edge of the balcony. And so I was right by the drums that day, and you look down onto the stage where the pulpit is, and where the pianos and the organ is, and where the directors stand, and where the soloists came to stand. And then there's a big choir loft that seats like 300. it's almost as big as this church. It seats 300 just in the choir loft. And so the whole place seats about 3,000 or 3,200. They said that because of people just in standing room only, that they thought maybe there were 3,500 people there that day. And that church it's not nearly full on a regular Sunday, but it was full that day. All right, next one. Some of the places that we went to sing were big concert halls, real nice, fancy concert halls. And then some of them, next one, is a concert venue that was for just any kind of music. Some of them were for classical music, and some were just for, big events or concerts of any kind. Right? One of the places that we got to sing out on the street, this is not the famous square of Timisoara, where the revolution started, but this is one of the squares where we got to go out and sing for the people. And so we sang one of our a cappella numbers, and we sang "How Great Is Our God" and "How Great Thou Art" and "Amazing Grace" and a couple of others, and we got to be a part of just singing for people as they walk through the streets, and it was pretty cool to be able to do that. Here's one of our concert setups. Here's me right here. Right there's Daryl, Red, Daryl, and there's me in our concert setup. And so I think we have a better one of the screen. I think my thing just quit working. And there we are again. Every time we set up, it was all different. So sometimes I sat by the drums. Sometimes the drums were completely on the other side. And I always sat in front of the trumpets. That's probably why I have hearing loss. But I've been doing that since I was 11. So, here's the last church that we were in. The church in Budapest. Just beautiful. See all those pipes of the pipe organ? Just incredible. The stained glass window. And we filled this church up twice and did 2 concerts because they had another place kind of lined up, but they didn't think that it would work out as well. We weren't sure if we could fill it up, and they would rather have 2 full concerts than one that was just barely partway full. So we did it twice. Here's some of the guys that were singing. Here's the trio that sang one of the songs. This guy is Tom Smith, who's Pat Atkins' friend. That guy is an incredible singer. And this solo that he sang on that song is just out of this world. And then he was joined by these other 2 in the trio. And they did a great job. And so there's lots of solos and lots of trios and stuff like that we do in our concert. Just all great music. This is the fancy concert hall. I think this is the one in Arad that's for classical music. And so it was pretty nice and fancy. And then I think the next one this is the outside view of that same place. Just beautiful. Great place. All right, and one of the places I met this man he played for the local Philharmonic Orchestra in the French horn section. And so he was particularly listening for us to see if we did very well. So he was great. He's one of the church members also that kind of helped bring us there and had it all set up. And so it was great to get to meet him and his family. All right, this is my small world moment that happened. This is Pastor Onesimus, who's the pastor of the First Baptist Church in Arad. And I got to sit and talk to him at 2 different meals. And then I asked him, this is in the elevator, I said, can I take a picture? So this man's name is Onesimus. His parents named him that. It's the biblical name that's from the book of Philemon. So you're familiar with that name. And so he's the pastor there. He's been there for 28 years. He's getting ready to retire. And he said one of the big struggles that he has is that it's time for them to choose a successor for him to have someone else take his place someday. And so that's something that we can pray about. And so I asked him about his life and about him growing up, his grandparents, his parents, and he all grew up in Arad, Romania. And he said he went to the United States. He came to the United States to do some of his seminary work. And guess who was his main professor during the time when he was here? Someone you know from Southeastern. Danny Aiken is his professor from Southeastern. And so that may have been before he was the president, but Danny Aiken is a good friend of his and was his professor at Southeastern. We projected the words, the songs in their language, just like we did in Ukraine, so that they would hear and understand. Their understanding of English is way better than my understanding of Hungarian or Romanian. And so, but we put it in their language so that they could understand every word. At the end of the concert, they would call up some of the church leaders and pastors, and at one point they had the mayor of the city of Pesh come up, and they let him try on the cowboy hat and take a picture, and then in the very last concert they actually gave the cowboy hat to the pastor. But this is the mayor of Pesh, and he took a picture, and I didn't show the one that had me, because I was like this far from where he's standing, right there. But just a great thing that they do, and this is the pastor of the church in Budapest. And the very last concert, they just gave him the cowboy hat and said, "Here, it's yours." And so I was very appreciative of the things that I got to do and see. This is the big church that is the oldest Protestant church in Hungary. It has in it lots of old artifacts, including the very first Bible that was printed in the Hungarian language. And so if you ever go, that's a great place to go visit. It is a church, but it's also like a museum where you can go in and tour it and see all the cool stuff. And see the little steeple thing, the peak on top. On top of that is a place you can go and walk around and see the whole city from up there. And then, if you ever just want a great place to go visit, like just a touristy kind of place, Budapest is the place I would suggest, because it is just beautiful. It's a great place to visit, and there's lots of tourist attractions, and the people that work with all the tourists, they speak great English, and so you'll never feel like you're lost in a big city. So there's one of the 3 bridges that's in Budapest. And so I didn't know this, but in Budapest, which is the Danube River runs right through the middle of it, there was the city of Buda and the city of Pest that was across the river from each other, and they didn't have bridges that went from one place to the other. So for years and years, they just went boats across the river until they built the bridges, and then they started calling it Budapest. And there's 3 big, beautiful bridges there in the city of Budapest. I think here's one of them at night. It's just beautiful. So there's lots of great parliament building, and there's a book if you'd like to see a bunch of pictures of the different places in Budapest. It's great. Here's one of the streets that was between the hotel and the Grand Market, where we just walked up and down. It was raining that day, so there's lots of umbrellas out. And so we had a great time in the city of Budapest the last day. And on the very last day, this was supposed to be like the great send-off of Don Blackley, to have him be a part of this dinner cruise. Okay, so we're on the boat, and we were out there, and before it got dark, and we went out on the outside of the boat and took some pictures, and there's the Parliament building in the background. Just big, beautiful buildings that would be great to go visit and see. And so I suggest if you ever get a chance to go visit, that's a great place to visit. So on the way back, I made sure while I was there and visiting the last couple of days to buy some gifts, and so I bought for my pastor a set of Hungarian playing cards, so that he would, because he's the game master of our church, right? And so also at the checkout, I thought, oh, here's one of those Snickers bars, and surely that must be the name boss in Hungarian. No, it's not. It means annoying. And he's the person that I know that's completely not annoying. So anyway, Way to go, Randy. And so, it was so great to see how there was an anticipation of what God was going to do in the lives of people. And I would love to be able to hear stories about how the follow-up and everything went. Because in one church, in that last church that we were there in Budapest, they had not had but 3 baptisms. Excuse me, that's not right. They had 1 baptism in the last 3 years in that church. And when we did those 2 concerts that night, there were 300 positive responses in that one church. And the follow-up that's going to happen afterwards, it's just incredible to think of what God is doing in those churches and those places that we went. And so there's plans, I think there's plans and at least hopes that we're going to go back someday, because we went to Ukraine. Singing Man went to Ukraine like 8 or 10 times. And so there's a possibility for us to go back and see all the things that God is going to do through those decisions, through those positive responses, and how those people can be followed up on. And one of the things that challenged me that Michael said while we were there is that if you're not involved in evangelism, if you're not doing the work of an evangelist, you're a fake Christian. You're just not doing it right. And so it's up to us to get the message out, okay? Evangelism is just telling the good news of Christ wherever you are, whether it's where you work or in your neighborhood or at your school or in your own family or on the other side of the world. It's just a matter of telling people about Jesus and the forgiveness that he offers because he paid for it with his blood. And that's what we want to offer to you today. If you need to make a decision for Christ, it's actually that simple. Jesus died for you. He wants to forgive you. He offers that as a free gift. And so today, as we get ready to offer our time of invitation, Brother Homer will be here at the front. And I want to offer that to you. If that's something that you need today, if you need to accept Christ as your Savior, if you need a place to join and be a part of a church that loves missions, this is a good place right here. I appreciate you so much. And I want to just express that this is our mission. This is the reason that we exist, is to offer the forgiveness that's offered in Jesus Christ. Amen? Let's pray together. Would you stand with me? Dear Lord, I ask that you would bless our time together today. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be involved in missions. And I ask, Lord, that as we come to the close of this service and offer the invitation of Jesus, that today someone might respond. Someone might be encouraged to follow you. And Lord, as we do that today, we just want to say thank you for all that you've done, all the great things that you've done. We ask in Jesus' name.